Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 16th of July. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast right here on ARIRANG TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. President Park Geun-hye appoints a new spy chief and 4 ministers, almost completing the first major cabinet shake-up of her administration. She is yet to formally appoint 2 other minister nominees. US President Barack Obama has called on his Chinese counterpart to ensure North Korea meets its denuclearization commitments. He says Washington and Beijing have to enhance their communication and coordination to make progress on the issue. Plus, Israel resumes its aerial bombardment of Gaza after earlier accepting an Egyptian proposed ceasefire as Hamas continued firing rockets. Palestinian officials say almost 200 people have been killed in 8 days of Israeli airstrikes. But our top story this morning is right here in South Korea. President Park Geun-hye has appointed 5 of her cabinet nominees who were confirmed by Parliament last week. Her spokesperson said the president appointed Choi Kyung-hwan as the new finance minister and deputy prime minister. That's a dual role there. And Lee Byung-kee as the head of the National Intelligence Service, this on Tuesday. She also appointed Choi Yang-hee, Ki-kweon and Kim Hee-jung as Ministers of Science, Labour and Gender Equality, respectively. The President, however, hasn't yet approved the nominees for Security Minister and Culture Minister. They're still unconfirmed by the National Assembly after she asked that they be reconsidered on Tuesday. Despite strong opposition from the opposition party for the nominees' alleged perjury and real estate speculation, President Park is widely expected to appoint them on this Wednesday. And President Park Geun-hye has announced the lineup for her Preparatory Committee for Reunification to build public consensus and set the groundwork for a unified peninsula. Our Kim Hee-jung reports.
The 50-member Joint Government Civilian Committee chaired by President Park has been tasked with seeking ways to systematically prepare for Korean reunification and setting a direction for the unprecedented process. 2 vice chairs have been named: Unification Minister Lee Byung-kee, representing the government, and former senior presidential foreign secretary Chung Jong-woo, who is currently the chair professor at Incheon National University, representing the civilian side. 29 civilian members with backgrounds related to reunification issues will then be divided into 4 subcommittees, according to their fields of expertise: foreign affairs and security, the economy, society and culture, and politics and law. They will be joined by another group of specialized advisors for in-depth discussions and research, with an ultimate goal of formulating a blueprint for a unified Korea. On the government side, the unification minister will be joined by 10 members, including the ministers of finance, foreign affairs and defense, as well as the senior presidential foreign secretary. As President Park had proposed during talks with the floor leaders of the ruling and opposition parties last week, the policy chiefs of both parties have been named as the 2 members representing parliament. 6 members from state-run research institutes have been tasked with boosting cooperation between the government and civilian sector. While not included in the 50-member list, the presidential office said advisors from civic groups, the media, and educational community will be asked to meet with the committee on a regular basis to offer their views on reunification. The committee will convene for the first time in early August to decide on its goals and direction. Kim Hee-jung, ARIRANG News.
Staying with inter-Korean relations, South Korea has opened the door for government funds to be used for humanitarian aid to North Korea. This for the first time since sanctions were imposed on the regime back in 2010. Hwang Sang-hee reports on how this move could signal a possible shift in the nice direction for inter-Korean relations.
South Korea's Ministry of Unification said Tuesday it would use its government-led Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund to provide humanitarian aid to the North Korean people.
The Unification Ministry has repeatedly expressed the will to provide humanitarian aid that will be of practical help to the North Korean people and to cooperate in the agriculture and the livestock sectors.
The government plans to make a total of 3 billion won, roughly $3 million, available for groups that help in the medical, agriculture, and livestock sectors. This marks the first time Seoul will be using public funds for humanitarian aid to Pyongyang since heavy economic sanctions were imposed on the regime in 2010, following a North Korean attack on a South Korean warship. An official at the Unification Ministry said the move does not mean the sanctions have been lifted, but that the government is merely providing humanitarian support for certain sectors. Experts say it could lead to a shift in inter-Korean relations.
Talks of a peaceful peninsula and better inter-Korean ties are highly likely when the Pope visits in August and during the Asian Games in September. It's possible that the cross-border policies of President Park Geun-hye and Kim Jong-un will become more flexible in the process.
But stumbling blocks remain. Chances of more missile launches by the North and joint military drills between South Korea and the United States that begin on Wednesday are almost certain to complicate matters. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, US President Barack Obama has been speaking with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping about the North Korean nuclear issue. Obama wants the two sides to work more closely together to pressure Pyongyang to give up its nuclear weapons. Kim Hee-jung reports.
The White House says that, during telephone talks this week, Obama told Chinese President Xi Jinping that the two sides have to enhance their communication and coordination to make progress on the North Korean nuclear issue. Obama also said their bilateral relationship should be defined by increased practical cooperation and the constructive management of differences. This could indicate the two superpowers might expand their existing communication channels or add an additional line to enhance cooperation. Multilateral dialogue, known as the Six-Party Talks, used to be the main line of communication dealing with North Korea's nuclear weapons program, but they haven't been held since 2008. Experts say Washington is well aware of the severity of the North Korean nuclear issue and is trying to encourage Beijing to pressure Pyongyang to come back to the negotiating table. U.S.-China relations have become increasingly strained in recent months amid maritime disputes in the South China Sea, accusations of cyber espionage, human rights issues, as well as their strategy on North Korea. Obama and Xi are scheduled to meet in Beijing in November at an Asian summit. Kim Hee-jung, ARIRANG News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says US troops stationed in Japan would need Tokyo's prior approval before engaging in a combat situation should an emergency arise on the Korean peninsula. The Japanese leader was speaking in a parliament hearing on Tuesday. Prior approval is needed under the Tokyo-Washington Security Pact when dispatching US troops for combat outside of Japan. Abe also defended his controversial push to expand his country's military role, saying it is only limited in its scope. He said Tokyo would require a formal constitutional amendment to engage in collective self-defense similar to that of other countries.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. A new economic team working directly under the president will launch in Korea on this Wednesday. The team is tasked with boosting domestic public spending and trying to get Korea at least, out of its low growth trap. For more on how they hope to do this, Hwang Ji-hye reports.
Korea's new economic team, which will be led by incoming Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan, has one goal: to spur growth. To achieve it, the team is expected to first fiddle with the nation's real estate market. Officials at the Finance Ministry say a set of economic policies for the second half of this year is expected to include measures like easing loan-to-value ratio limits for mortgage lending to 70%. That means homebuyers would be able to borrow up to $140,000 when buying a house worth $200,000. The current loan-to-value ratio stands at 50% for those living in the nation's capital area, which allows them to borrow just $100,000 when purchasing the same house. Home buyers who are short of cash typically are forced to borrow money from non-banking financial institutions that charge them higher interest rates. Economic policymakers expect people moving their loans from non-banking lenders to banks to spend more, which would also lead to pulling the country out of its sluggish domestic demand trap. While many are concerned that easing housing loan regulations could lead to more household debt, which already hovers around $980 billion, the nation's real estate market is welcoming the government's expected move.
Easing regulations won't really lead to more household debt because there aren't a lot of speculative investments in the real estate market these days.
Economists still add that the government should also set up countermeasures to address the side effects that could occur from easing housing loan regulations. Hwang Jie, ARIRANG News.
Now, the job figures for June are out. The number of Koreans in work edged up from a month earlier, but the job creation posted a smaller increase compared to recent months. Statistics Korea says the jobless rate in June stood at 3.5%. down 0.1 percentage point from the same month last year. The pace of on-year job creation slowed, though. In June, the number of employed people stood at a little more than 25.9 million. That's up almost 400,000 from a year earlier. But this is smaller than the figure tallied during the months of May and all the way back to February. In February, it stood at nearly 835,000 new jobs on year. Labour market conditions have worsened due to sluggish domestic consumption in the wake of April's ferry disaster. Now, popular messaging service Line has reportedly taken the first step towards going public on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. The initial public offering for the Japanese firm is estimated to be valued at nearly $10 billion. Reuters reports that the company applied for the IPO around 2 weeks ago and has hired Nomura Holdings and Morgan Stanley to manage the filing. Line, which is actually owned by Korean internet search giant Naver, is also reportedly considering listing on the New York Stock Exchange. The move comes as the messaging app has rapidly expanded overseas, not only in Asia but across America, with the company boasting almost 500 million global downloads. Line and Naver, meanwhile, have declined to comment on the reported deal. Now, Korea's foreign ministry has decided to extend its travel ban to countries like Iraq and Syria for at least another 6 months, citing continued civil unrest in those countries. Koreans won't be able to visit Iraq, Syria and Yemen until at least the end of January next year, and to Afghanistan and Somalia by at least February of next year. The Foreign Ministry, which announced its decision on Tuesday, said it expects political uncertainties, terrorist threats and public unrest, as well as just general danger, to continue for the coming months. Now, on a lighter note and on the cultural front, a new photo exhibition in Seoul features the works of an American photographer by the name of Jordan Matter, who first gained global recognition for his project called Dancers Among Us. He is premiering more than 60 new images right here in Korea, and our cultural correspondent Park Geun-hye sat down with him to find out what inspires him.
It's all about the joy and passion of being alive. None of these images have been digitally modified, and the dancers and the photos aren't relying on the help of wires or trampolines to enhance their jumps. Photographer Jordan Matter's works aim to reflect the beauty and wonders of everyday life, capturing what he calls that one magical moment.
You go through this series of events every single day that we just pass through without any sort of like recognition of their beauty and of the specialness of them. The magical moments means to me stack all of the moments of your life up together and make each one as magical as possible.
First inspired by his 3-year-old son, who was living a life full of joy and full of wonder in the moment, Matter came up with the idea of taking pictures through the eyes of a child. He thought dancers would best represent the beauty of each passing moment.
They embody this kind of beauty and this emotion, and they're able to physicalize that and show us a story. And so it made perfect sense if I wanted to create and almost make the ordinary extraordinary in a way, and show everyday moments, but make them more extreme and more beautiful.
His works have touched the hearts of many, and his book, Dancers Among Us, made the New York Times bestseller list. He says for the best results, he always lets spontaneous moments happen.
All of it is serendipity. All of it is luck. If you can try to allow life to happen and then to react to it, as opposed to trying to hold on so tightly and control it, if you can let go of control a bit, then you will be very happy to see all of the surprises that await you.
During his stay in Korea, he will collaborate with Korean dancers and Taekwondo martial artists to capture more magical images that represent the wonders of life. Park Geun-hye, ARIRANG News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Wednesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by as always for us at the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
Israel has resumed airstrikes on the Gaza Strip and has warned of an intensified offensive there. This after Hamas rejected a ceasefire proposed by Egypt.
That's right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had no choice but to widen and increase Israel's so-called Operation Protective Edge. Netanyahu's vow to destroy Hamas's military capabilities came after Israel saw its first casualty in the 8-day-old conflict. Police say a man in his 30s delivering food to soldiers was hit by one of the 125 rockets fired by Hamas militants since Tuesday morning when the truce was to have started. Israel had held its fire for some 6 hours before resuming aerial assaults in the afternoon. Hamas said it could not accept a truce that offered no real gains for the faction, particularly as nearly 200 Palestinians have been killed in the conflict so far. It called for more international mediation that could prevent future clashes. A morning commute for hundreds of Russians turned terribly wrong on Tuesday. A rush hour subway derailment injured scores and killed at least 21 in Russia's capital city. That death toll could rise as dozens transported to hospitals were in critical condition. State-run Itar TASS news agency reports 3 metro train cars derailed in a tunnel located in Moscow's deepest metro station, making rescue efforts 84 meters underground challenging. Dozens of ambulances and helicopters were dispatched, and by Tuesday afternoon, the rescue operation became a recovery mission as Moscow's mayor declared a day of mourning for the dead. Multiple Russian officials have ruled out terrorism as the cause. Some reports say a power surge was to blame. Moscow's subways are among the busiest in the world, used by some 11 million people every day. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says there are very real gaps in the West's negotiations with Iran on the fate of its nuclear program, boosting the likelihood that a pact will not be reached by the July 20th deadline. America's top diplomat has been engaged in talks with his Iranian counterpart, joined by the foreign ministers of Britain, France, and Germany in Vienna to curb Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for ending sanctions. Kerry said negotiations will continue at least through Sunday. The main sticking point has been Iran's nuclear enrichment program, which Tehran has maintained it needs to make nuclear fuel and says it intends to expand. The U.S. wants to cut it, fearing it could be used to manufacture the core of nuclear missiles. Extra concern for mothers in the U.S. state of Kansas this morning after a 9-year-old girl was found to have died there due to a brain-eating amoeba living in warm, standing water. Holly Eust had spent weeks swimming in several bodies of fresh water and died last week from an amoeba called Naegleria fowleri. Infections from the parasite is rare, but it happens when the amoeba enters through the nose and works its way into the central nervous system and finally around the brain. The impact is devastating. In the past 50 years, only 3 out of 130 infected people are known to have survived.
And a good Wednesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Incheon Asian Games, as talks related to the North Korean athletes have been making the headlines a lot lately. And in the latest news, there's a possibility that the two Koreas might cheer together at the Incheon Asian Games. Now, according to a website called With Our People, North Korean table tennis star Kim Hee-jung expressed his desire to have the two Koreas cheer together during the Incheon Asian Games. Now, he stated that the last time the two nations cheered together with the unified Korea flag was one of the most emotional scenes in his life and would like to see it again. Despite the ongoing political tensions, it is possible that the two nations might come together to cheer on the athletes. And now moving over to the women's junior handball team. After advancing to the World Women's Junior Handball Championship finals for the first time in 23 years over the weekend, the South Korean junior team beat Russia for the gold medal and returned home with a warm welcome. At the center of it all was 20-year-old Lee Hyojin, who won her second straight MVP honors, this time after finishing off the World Championships with 64 goals. And of course, after leading Korea to a championship victory, she expressed her desire to play over in Europe, as many fans have their eyes set on Lee Hyojin to one day lead the senior team. And now moving over to the South Korean national football team. With manager Hong Myung-bo resigning from his post last week, the Korea Football Association has been looking for his replacement. And they might have the guy they've been looking for. And that man is Ulsan Hyundai Tigers head coach Kim Ho-gun, who has a ton of experience as a head coach, even with the national team back in 2002 as a temporary head coach. He's also won the Asian Champions League in 2012 after going undefeated and won the honor as the AFC Manager of the Year. Now, though it isn't confirmed just yet, sources say that it looks like the national team will soon have a new head coach. And now finishing things off in the KBO with a couple of games canceled due to rain, as the NC Dinos and the Doosan Bears rained out, as well as the Lotte Giants and the Nexen Heroes. But the Hanwha Eagles continue their winning ways as they beat the SK Wyverns 8-3. So with that said, let's take a look at the Samsung Lions take on the LG Twins. And of course, going into the game here, second inning, bases loaded for Choi Kyung-hwan. He walks and it's 1-0 LG. Next batter, Baek Chang-soo at bat, and he walks as well, and it's 2-0 without a single hit. Now, Oh-ji-won this time, a sac fly to right field to score Son Ju-in, and it's 3-0 LG. But the sixth inning, down 4-0 red-hot Park Sung-min, and there it goes to deep left, gone, and it's now 4-1. But in the eighth inning of the game, bases loaded for Choi Kyung-hwan, a double to left field. This clears the bases as the LG Twins cruise through 7-1, your final score. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, lingering monsoon rain from yesterday has let up for the southern regions, but clouds will continue to stick around throughout the day, while the central areas will have a fair amount of sunshine all day long. So with the sunshine, upper regions will have a daily high rising to low 30s, a bit higher than yesterday, while the many regions on the southern areas will have temperatures below 30 degrees Celsius. But tomorrow and Friday, we have another round of monsoon rain in the forecast around the nation, even here in Seoul, but it should be more like sprinkle to light rain than showers, not enough for drought relief. So please do keep this in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul will rise to 32, while Daegu and Gwangju will have a daily high of 31 and 28, and Busan should make it to 26 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 27 and 31 respectively, and Dokdo will reach 27 this afternoon. Well, this comfort index will get higher as we head into the midday, so take it easy everyone, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Jian, and that's all we have for now, but we'll be back with another newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.